What is going on, everybody? I am Carter Sandvin with the official channel for Sandbox Illustration. If I look familiar to you guys at all, I did have a previous channel before this channel. It was just Zeke. That one was just a personal channel for me, just something as a creative outlet. I retired that channel because after a while, it just wasn't as enjoyable for me to make videos on that one, because that one is something that's like purely creative. So like there's no like direct reason to continue running it. So once I didn't really want to anymore, I just kind of stepped down. The reason that I'm back though with this channel is, I mean, if I had to be blunt with it, it's just to kind of help promote my business. Speaking of that, my business, Sandbox Illustration, what is that? First off, the name, obviously, you got Sandvin, you got Sandbox, something that I came up with a few years ago. I don't know if you've ever heard of a play on words, but if you haven't, this is your first. The business is just pretty much anything that I can do with my art. I kind of connect it in a way in terms of like how I want to run it, at least in terms of how Jazza runs it. You know, for those of you that don't know, Jazza is a very large art YouTuber. In fact, one of my biggest inspirations. He's taught me a lot that has gotten me to the point that I'm at today. In fact, I will actually put his channel down in the description. I highly recommend that you guys go check out his channel and his art. But I like the way that he's run his whole operation. You know, he kind of dabbles in a little bit of everything, but the main focus is generally just brand exposure, which is kind of what I want to do. You know, I don't have one specific thing that I'm running my art on. I'm going to be doing a lot of things. I'm going to be doing merchandise, whether that be prints, t-shirts, posters, stuff like that. I'm going to be writing comic books. That's going to be my main focus, is graphic novels and overall writing, stuff like that. I'm going to be maybe hopefully finding some way to just monetize my online content, but I don't really want like one main focus in terms of how I run my business. I just kind of want it to be sort of an encapsulation of everything that I can do. I'm not going to be doing freelance. I did freelance back at one point. I don't think it was for me though. In fact, I'll actually be getting into that later. But that's pretty much all that my business is going to be, just general online artist influencer. I hate using that word, but I can't think of a different one. We'll come up with another one later. Just to tell you guys a little bit about me and my relationship with art. I've actually been creating art since creating art. I've been drawing since I was 2 years old. When I was at a very young age, I was actually watching Blue's Clues all the time. In fact, my sister, back when I was like 12 or something, she got me the notebook that was in the show. Very cool. I watched that show a lot and I would copy what they did in the show. If you guys don't know, in the show, every episode there would be some kind of mystery that they were trying to solve, and there would always be 3 clues. And every time that they found one of those clues, they would draw them in this little notebook, sketchbook deal. And I always copied what they did, you know, I always drew what they were drawing. I always copied that from what I saw on the TV. And it just kind of took off from there. I would draw even when I wasn't watching the show. I would draw characters from different TV shows. I would draw random objects that I found. I would draw people in my family. Then it grew from there to, you know, I would make my own characters. I would write little stories. I would make fan fiction of superheroes that I watch. I would make my own superheroes. One of the biggest staples of what I drew as a kid was, I did one of those, I'm not sure how to describe it well. It was kind of one of those like little twists on myself, making myself into like a big epic sci-fi action character, telling like stories about that guy going to like fighting crime and having superpowers. His name is actually Kartanzik. It's such a, that's only a name that an 8-year-old nerd would come up with. But that's what I did with my art for a majority of my life. And then, like I said, it slowly evolved into me actually making stories. And then when I was around 11 or 12, I would say, I realized that it's like, I need to make stories. I need to write and create worlds and have an outlet for expressing these ideas and stories that I have in my head. And so at first I wanted to be an animator, but then I kind of learned over time that that was more computer based, and at the time I was very much like, I was religiously a traditional artist. I never even wanted to touch back at that age, I never even wanted to touch a computer for art. I never wanted to touch a display tablet. So I decided, hey, I've seen a lot of artists actually make hand-drawn comics. In fact, one of my favorite comics from a kid, I have it on my bookshelf back here, is Batman Little Gotham, which the whole thing was actually made in watercolor. And so I was like, I could absolutely make comics by hand. And so from there, all I wanted to do was write comic books. For a while there, I kind of set that aside, didn't really want to do that anymore for a few years. And in fact, later on in life, just a few years back, I had a small art business. I had a freelance business. It started out that there's this guy in my town who I know, very well-known artist. He has an art gallery here in town, and he saw some of my art at some point. I actually went to school with his niece. He offered me a deal one day. There was a big event going on in my town, and so he said that I could actually set up a booth and draw people, you know, kind of like they do with caricature stands at fairs. I don't do caricatures, but I tried to like cartoonify people. And then that took off because I came up with the idea that it's like, hey, some of these people, because I actually had some people that came to it, it took me about a half hour to make some of the drawings. And so they were like, we actually want to go do some different stuff, but we would still love one of your drawings. Could I maybe get your information and send you some pictures to make for me, and then you could make us some art from there? And from there, my freelance business took off. That wasn't really for me. I didn't enjoy it very much. If I have to explain why, it didn't really scratch the art itch that I had. I never found much accomplishment or enjoyment in making that art because I wasn't expressing any creative ideas that I had. It was just kind of like, hey, draw my dog, draw my kids. Once you draw enough family portraits and dogs, you kind of get sick of it after a while because, I don't know, something just about the creative process of it. There's not very much room for spontaneity, you know, and I think that's a big part of it, is like, I don't have much room to like really push my boundaries as an artist. So I retired that. I no longer do freelance. Probably not gonna do freelance ever again. What I am considering is that hopefully once my art gets big enough, I'll have like, I don't know, holiday deals where if someone wins like a contest of like, hey, if whoever comments this or whoever wins my competition of like liking, commenting, and then commenting this, I'll pick 3 random people and then I'll make drawings for them, and I probably won't even charge them. So like it'll more be like a gift of sorts. The goal is for my art to become my main profession. But I won't do it through freelance. I already tried that. Not a fan of it. So I guess the wonder is, what am I going to be doing with this channel? With this channel, I'm going to actually be doing pretty much anything that I can in terms of my art. You know, I want to create pieces on here that will later be released for sales, you know, in terms of merchandise. I'm going to be talking about the stories that I'm writing. I'm going to be talking about future art projects. Pretty much anything that does relate to my art and my art process, I will be showing on this channel. Other sites that I'm going to have, I do have an Instagram. That one is just going to, I'm thinking that one will be like a much more casual form, you know, like you won't find anything too special on there, but it will be like, there will be art updates, there will be things like that, but I'll also just release like little behind the scenes stuff, little fun sketches and doodles and every now and then. I'm considering other ones. I'm considering a Facebook page. I am considering something in the future along the lines of a Patreon, you know, just like a general donation and crowdfunding website. I've made an interesting rule for myself, and some people may not like the sound of this, but just hear me out. If I do that, I don't think I'm going to have exclusive content on there. I know how that sounds to some people, to where it's like, well, then what's the incentive for your audience to actually donate to your Patreon? Really, there isn't one. It's more just like, if you want to help contribute to this and make sure that it can actually happen, I'm just eternally grateful for that. And I can understand why creators do that, why they have exclusive content on stuff like Patreon. It's sort of the idea of like, oh, they're going above and beyond with being an audience member, that I should give something back to them, you know? I can understand that, but the way that I see it is, I don't want to limit what my audience can find of me. I don't want anything of my content to be hidden from people. You know, if I'm going to make something, I want it to be out there. I want people to have it. The way that I feel about it is sometimes it can turn into, oh, if I don't donate to their Patreon, then I'm losing a piece of their work that I will find very valuable. You know, so I don't want them to feel like they're almost stuck in donating to the Patreon. Like, say, I don't know, say with the Patreon I do like art lessons, like something like that. I just want to give to the people, you know, like I don't want it to be like, well, I want to learn how he makes art, but I don't have the money to donate to Patreon. So I think if I were to do something like that, it's just like, it's just there, and if you want to help out in that way, thank you so much. You don't have to. There's no reason that you should, but if you want to, I'm eternally grateful for that. So that's kind of where I stand on having something like a Patreon. Other than that, though, just other standard sites. I will actually be, this isn't related to my art, but at some point in the future I am actually going to be starting a podcast series with a good friend of mine, which I'm sure he will appear in this channel later on because he does have a lot of ties to the stories that I'm creating and other projects of mine. And I believe that's really all that I have to say, so thank you guys so much for watching. I am Carter, this is Sandbox Illustration, and we will see you guys in my next art-related video. Bye.